culture. What is that even? And how do we need to build that? And to get that right, I would quickly want to have a look together with you into our brains, because culture starts over here in our brains. So let's have a quick look. We go into the eye, into the nerve, and we see a lot of small, interesting neurons in our brains. And those neurons, they have a very specific property. They are growing piece by piece, especially when we learn something. So let me highlight how I mean that. So if we look into the brain, what we have is a set of neurons. Those are 2 neurons. Whenever we learn something new, it means that the connection between those neurons is actually becoming thicker and thicker. And this is actually measurable. As you might know, the signal transmission on that neuron is via electricity, via impulses. If you learn something, if you get the first time on a bike, if you the first time get a golf club in your hand, for example, it is wobbly, it doesn't feel intuitive, it doesn't feel so really smooth if you do that, right? Now, the first time you learn something, the neuronal connection means it's 4 kilometers per hour, signal transmission speed. Now, once you have learned something over and over again, if you repeated it, a lot of times we get a signal speed up to 400 kilometers per hour. This is the moment when you, without even thinking, you get onto your bike and you drive. Now, learning you can thus imagine as creating something like this, a desire path. So the first time you learn something is like walking from A to B in a field of man-high grass. It's hard to see where you even need to go. You are just pushing your way through back and forth, and you make sure that you find your way. This is for the first round, right? Once you go for the second round, going in there, you have already some grass pushed aside. And after a few more repetitions, we end up with a high-speed highway with 400 kilometers per hour. Now, this is a very important aspect of how our brains work. Our brains are basically pattern machines, because those desire path is nothing else than the condensed essence of what you have done in the past. We call that habits. And you know how powerful and strong habits are. Now, what is an important building block for the way of how we work? And what is an important building block of the culture that we're having? And for that, we zoom out a little bit. We go out of the brain and we need to ask the question, what is going on between us? Now, it's all individuals that have their brains with all the patterns, with all the logics, and we build social networks. And those social networks do something very, very interesting. They build some desire paths together. So what you see here is a desire path in a park. Over here, there is the paved way where the park designer thought it would be a great idea to make the way over here. This here is the way that, who did that? Well, somebody decided to go that way, and somebody else went, that's a good idea, I go there too. And a few people made that first movement through the grass. And after a few people have seen, hey, that's the way to go, it became to be a standard solution in the social network. And this is an example of how we see culture emerging to a certain part.